Yeah, the book is called Life Switch, and life switch is the noun, the thing that we all have. We all have a life switch, and it's in our heads. And essentially, we're either living on or we're living off. And so I think that I've been able to define that one thing that can be the difference maker. If you're living on, you're thriving, you're looking for opportunities, you're making the most out of everything. You're not, getting knocked down and staying there. If your switch is off, you're surviving, you're getting through the day, you're dragging, you're maybe not as positive, maybe you're not looking at possibilities and thinking that you can do anything that you set your mind to. So it's life switch, how to experience the power of living on by discovering your potential, passion, and purpose.
Mr. Joel Steele, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here, Dustin.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. We've been talking for a few months, and I know you've been very busy with the book launch. So here we are. Before we jump into the deep end here, could you give our audience a quick thumbnail of who you are and what it is that you do?
That's going to be a long thumbnail, but I'll do my best.
Well, we'll dive into it. We'll break it apart and take the journey. But yeah,
Yeah,
tell us who
yeah.
you are.
Look, basically, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started different businesses. Some have worked, some haven't. Lessons, tremendously valuable lessons were learned from all those experiences. And so, in that regard, I'm just trying to share the value that I gained from the insight, or even more so from the failures. I'm a huge family man. I'm a sports guy. I just believe in waking up every day and trying to either do what you love to do, or at least try to find what you want to be doing with your time, because you only live life once. And therefore, every day counts and every day should matter. And I'm just trying to spread the positive messages that I've employed in my life to see if I can help someone else get on the right path, and really not just walk down it, but really sprint down it and get the most out of it and themselves.
Yeah. So before we talk about your origin story, a lot of times I start from the beginning and talk. But before we do that, the book. What's the name of the book? What is it about?
Yeah, the book is called Life Switch, and life switch is the noun, the thing that we all have. We all have a life switch, and it's in our heads. And essentially, we're either living on or we're living off. And so I think that I've been able to define that one thing that can be the difference maker. If you're living on, you're thriving, you're looking for opportunities, you're making the most out of everything. You're not, getting knocked down and staying there. If your switch is off, you're surviving, you're getting through the day, you're dragging, you're maybe not as positive, maybe you're not looking at possibilities and thinking that you can do anything that you set your mind to. So it's life switch, how to experience the power of living on by discovering your potential, passion, and purpose.
And so one of the things you alluded to was learning from the failures. And I want to go through a lot of the wins and the losses, but it's so amazing for me, especially in the entrepreneurial journey of how hard it is. And people say, how hard, like, oh, it's like this, it's like getting punched in the face, it's like chewing glass. Somebody told me one time, and you hear those things and you're like, oh yeah, I've been through hard things before. But there's something different about entrepreneurship and putting your faith and your belief and your money, your time behind something and how hard it all is. How about the beginning of your journey? Like where did you begin? How did you start out?
Well, you're totally right. Being an entrepreneur, starting a business, it's not like school where you take a test and maybe you get a B or a C, or maybe you fail and there's another test. When you're putting your money and to a degree your life on the line, it's not a joke, it's not a drill. And I'm happy to convince people out of being an entrepreneur as much as I want to convince them to pursue their dreams, because some people, either it's not for them or they're not ready for it. And what I mean by that is, the biggest lift I ever really did was open up a healthy fast food restaurant chain in my early 20s. I decided to pursue that at the end of my senior year in college, and I was hell bent focused on making it happen. People laughed at me. They said, "You'll never do it. You have no restaurant experience." I never worked at a restaurant a day in my life. I wasn't one of those people that worked in a fast food restaurant that I think like 70 or 80% of the population has at some point. Up until that point, I hadn't ever worked in a restaurant, and I decided I was going to do it. And I think that's the biggest advantage, the biggest asset people have is if they really are passionate about something and believe they can do it, then they can. And that's how I felt about the restaurant. So I started it, and long story short, it ended up bombing out after a while really bad. And so one of the things I did a couple of years after that happened, and I became successful in the financial services industry, I went back to my college, my school, and I spoke to a hospitality management class. And I said, I gave them some tough love, and I explained the realities of a business in a restaurant. And probably the least time was spent on food and restaurant related things. So many other fires came up, had to be put out. And so, if you're trying to start a business, whether it's a tech business or whatever business, you have to realize that a lot of what you want to do is not going to be what you're doing. It's going to be all kinds of stuff. Me, I was washing dishes, I was running deliveries around Philadelphia in like 105-degree weather, sweating profusely, handing out free samples, negotiating with people at gunpoint who came into my store, finding ways to get the homeless people out. There's a lot of things you have to deal with. And so the thing that really makes it work though is again that undying passion to the goal, or said differently, why. If you really know why you're doing something and you stick to that and you are super passionate about it, then you'll get through that. But you have to really have a good long talk with yourself to make sure that you're going to be able to get through those hard times, right? I picture my restaurant, people showing up, buying food, money flowing into the register. I didn't picture all the other stuff that happened, but I still stuck to my why because I wanted to help people eat healthier, have healthier lifestyles. And I was really frustrated and kind of angry that McDonald's and these other chains were bringing very unhealthy food to people, and they were making it too easy to say no. I mean, there's a McDonald's at like every corner, and back in the day, I don't know if they still have it, but their dollar menu, you can feed a family for like $5 back in the day, and so they were the competition. I wanted to give people a better alternative, and that's all I pictured when was going through all this stuff.
How long were you, with that venture?
Start to finish, I think it was like 4 years, something like that, 3, 4
Mhm.
years. Terribly tough time. In fact, when I did the book and I talked about it quite a bit because it really ended up being the lowest point in my life for a while. But it really also was the catalyst to the success that I later found. So, it was a great thing I didn't quit at my low point. But I really kind of blacked out a lot of that stuff. And only in doing the book did I really elaborate and kind of go back there mentally. And as I did, I even wrote in the book that I had not explored this in 20 years since it happened, because it was 2004. Yeah, that I shut the last restaurant down. And when I first wrote the book, I think there was like 2 pages about the restaurant. And now there's probably like, if I had to guess, there's probably like 30 pages. I mean, think about that. Think about how much detail I left out. It was like restaurant open, restaurant closed, on to something else. But I really had to extract value from what happened and explain that to other people so they can understand where it all came from, and ultimately what I did with it, and how it wasn't ultimately a loss. It ended up being it was a nightmare, but that nightmare became a blessing in disguise.
It's amazing how cathartic it can be to go back and explore these experiences because, in your mind, not pretending like I know anything about I know how the mind works, but it's like you can have these moments in your life that you just paint with this brush and it's like this is what it was, but then when you explore it, you're like, "Oh, wait, no, these are the things that were really important and I forgot about that. Maybe I didn't unpack that yet." So that's even a fun experience to be able to do that and recalibrate the experience. Very cool.
Yeah, it's been one of those things that I didn't realize it, but it's been very, I don't want to say therapeutic, but I'm enjoying the additional value that the restaurant it's bringing to my life because I'm bringing these lessons to other people. It wasn't just like this guy started a business and it failed, then he was successful. It's that experience that I can help other people with, whether it's to help them to realize, yeah, I'm going to go full speed ahead, or hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not ready for that. Maybe I need to work in a business before I start my own business, because some people are ready, some aren't. It's the same thing with sports. Some people are ready to be the rookie quarterback on day one in the NFL. Other ones, they get hit that first time and they're never the same. You never see them again. So you need to be really honest with yourself.
And so let's talk about the sports piece for a bit, 'cause I know it's a big part of your career, but going back, you were an athlete in high school?
I was an athlete in high school, but I was not an athlete that was that good. It's a long story, so I won't do it all here today. But I was a guy that was raised by a single mother who was working, busting her butt to put food on the table. She didn't teach me all that stuff. She didn't push me, coach me, any of that stuff with sports. So I struggled as a kid athletically, and ultimately I had some experience, really interesting experiences in high school where I went from sort of worst to first, if you will, from bench warmer to being in my peak shape and all that kind of stuff. But I always loved sports. I love the idea of a team. I love pushing yourself and achieving something you maybe thought you couldn't do, because sports is like, like, can you be the best? Like, being the best to me has always been fascinating. And I've learned over time that it's sometimes not being the best, but it's really being your best that should be your target. You can be your best. There's nothing else you can do about other people. So I was really into sports, watched sports, played sports, but I wasn't, like getting letters for college or anything like that.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that, the lessons that you learn in sports and how they translate into your career and your life, that perseverance, that it's progress, not perfection. You wanna achieve more, you wanna do better, but sometimes it's just like, "Okay, what do I need to do to get to that next level and get a
Right.
little bit better?"
Right.
So, after when you made the decision to find it, because you had your why, you have this business, it's not working out the way you want. In hindsight, you're learning a lot. It's a learning
Yeah.
process. But like, what was that final decision when you were like, it's time to move on? Because that's another thing. You put so much time and so much effort, so much of yourself and your life into something. Were you like, I gotta close the doors?
Yeah. Well, what happened was I had my blinders on. I mean, I was like this. Like, I was not letting anything knock me off course. And that was necessary to even open the business, because opening a business is a major success. But going back to sports, it's like the playoffs, right? A team makes the playoffs and they celebrate, and then they enjoy it for that day. But then it's on to, okay, we have to deal with the next game next week. And that's kind of like what the business was like when the restaurant opened. It was like making the playoffs, celebrate it. Okay, it's time to get real serious now, on to the next round, on to the next phase and challenge. But what happened was, over time, there was a series of events. The simple one was that I was really running out of money, but I knew I could keep getting money if I really believed that I could make it work. And so I was about to open up a fourth store, where I thought, because my goal was to grow. My goal was to just keep growing, keep being in the red. And the way to success, because I wanted to build a national franchise and have the flagship. And my thought was, if I can build up to 4, 5, 10+ stores, eventually someone will come in. And I don't need to be making a profit. I just need to be alive. I need to be afloat. And so I decided last second not to do that fourth store, because everything was like wobbling, like the foundation wasn't solid. And so I decided not to do that. Also, the main store that was the flagship was experiencing these sanitary issues where we kept having to close and kick everyone out of the store, which was disgusting, bad for reputation, and expensive. And between pretty much being out of money, realizing that growth was, I couldn't grow anymore because everything was so shaky, and then having this internal issue with the store, that's when I took off those blinders and I was like, you know what? I really truly believe this was going to work, and it's not. It didn't. And I felt a small sense of relief very briefly. It's like really briefly. And then it turned into a downward absolute spiral. I mean, I really struggled at that point. I did not know what to do. I mean, I sat in a chair like I'm sitting here right now, catatonic. Like, I couldn't move. I could blink, but I couldn't move because there was nothing I could do that was going to fix the problem. There was no phone call. There was no one I could talk to. There's nothing, absolutely nothing I can do, because I had debt of like close to $500,000 at that point. I was like 24 years old, roughly, and I'm just like, I mean, I can't sell sandwiches. I can't sell, like, blood, and it's like, what do you
Mhm.
do? What do you do when you're buried so deep in a hole and you can't even see like the direction to crawl in to get out of it? And so that's where I was. And fortunately, started to take one little baby step at a time, I realized even though it felt like it, I wasn't dying. This didn't have to be the end. And I started to just work to build myself back up from there. And I used, physical fitness to keep my sanity to a degree. And a lot of what I talk about in the book is progress every day. If you're making progress every day, that means you have a chance to have 365 days of progress, and that can really add up and mean a lot. And also, sometimes like if you're swimming in the direction of something, and that's great, but you need to keep your head up and look around, right? Are there boats coming? Is there maybe a life raft, maybe a rescue boat, maybe a shark to avoid? And so I was trying to swim forward to not drown, but looking for how can I get out of here? Because I can't swim like this forever, right? Nobody can. And that's when I started to realize that, hey, financial services might be my rescue boat, might be a way I could have a path to see a light to get out of this position. And then from there, I just started to crawl towards that path, walk down that path, and eventually sprint down that path.
When you mentioned being catatonic, you're sitting in a chair and you said you took that first step. Was there somebody or some moment or something that you look back on that you were like, this was that first step, like an initial wake up call or something?
Yeah, you're looking at them. And that's the thing. No one is coming to save any of us, right? There are missions that we have to go on alone. And that was part of my realization. I had plenty of blame to pass around to the landlord, to the customers, to the employees, everything, right? My suppliers, they charged me so much money to make this store look the way it did. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I had to take responsibility that if I wanted to get out of this, none of that was going to help, right? That's all negative energy. And so I just had to look in the mirror and realize if I'm ever going to be the person that I hoped and thought I would be, then only I can dig out of this. And I had, a supportive mom. I had a supportive fiance at that time, but it's like almost like they were here, but it's like I didn't see them. They didn't exist because it was just like you've got to get out of this mess you got yourself in. And so I owned it, I know. And although I admitted failure, I didn't accept failure, if that makes sense. I was like, okay,
Mm.
it
And not only
failed.
does that make sense, I love that.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not okay with this. And I'm not going to become a failure. And again, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm thrilled, all these years looking back that was the springboard to the success I later had, the motivation that I needed. But in that moment, it was just like I'm too young, 24, to be a failure and be that guy. I could have done this and I did that. And I mean, we all know people like that. I used to be in good shape. I had a business. I had all this money. I'm like, I'm too young to do the I used to. I'm like, I still have, so much life ahead of me. So I took a big shot, a big swing, and it didn't work out how I envisioned it. But because I didn't quit, and anyone out there listening, when you don't quit, anything can happen. I mean, think about boxing matches, right? Sometimes you just need to land one blow. Maybe it's in the 12th round, right? But if you quit or don't get up in the 8th or ninth round, well, you're done. And then what do we all do after we lose? We go home and we feel like crap about it. We think about what we could have done. When you're in the moment and it's your life and everything's on the line, a championship moment, like don't wait to go home after the loss and kick yourself. Do something about it when you can do something about it.
When you went to that next step and the financial services, I want you to talk about that. Actually, how about this? The question I have for you will come through the conversation. What was the next step when you went to the financial services world?
Yeah, well, it was first of all, finding that door and deciding to walk through it. But my mom was in the industry for years, and she tried to recruit me in. And the more she was trying to get me in, the more I was like, absolutely not. That's the most boring business on the planet. I don't want to do it. And I said, you had success with it. I don't want to just ride your coattails. I want to do my own thing. I very much marched to the beat of my own drum. But I did some research and I realized that she was specializing in certain areas of the industry. And there was a lot of other areas that she wasn't even involved with. So I said, okay, I'm going to come in, but I'm going to do it my own way, my own business. Now you have your business. I'm going to have my own business and I'm going to do what you don't do. And that's what I did. And I just really went to work, keeping myself busy. I was engaged at this point. I was still selling off restaurant equipment and everything at that point for a while once I got into the business. So I'm working all day, calling people, stopping in places. This is 2004. So you have to realize we had email, but we weren't really using it that much yet. Like I didn't have a BlackBerry. I had probably a flip phone back then. I wasn't texting people. I was calling people, you know? And so I would call people, I'd go to see people. I had a lot of meetings around kitchen tables, things like that. I had a lot of people that didn't show up to those meetings at their own houses. I would come out with illustrations of life insurance and investment plans to show them. And they'd say, well, what if we want to do this much? I said, I'll be back in 30 minutes. They'd go back to the office, I'd redo it, print it out, go back to their house. Like this is how it was at that point in my career. And anyway, I saw a path though, where working 7 days a week, as many hours as I wanted to or needed to, I actually could make enough money to pay my bills and not claim bankruptcy. And so for in my first full month, I made a good amount of money, made like $8,300 in the industry, which was, approximately the average I would need to make every month to hit 100,000. I'm like, okay, that's enough. It's not going to give me a lot of room after because I needed 7,000 a month to pay my restaurant bills and my basic living expenses. But it showed me it was possible. It showed me that I could do this if I keep it up every day, week, and month for the foreseeable future. So seeing that first month was really helpful to say, yes, this is confirming my suspicions that this industry can work for me. So it was kind of like an arranged marriage, right? I needed financial services to be able to, yeah, there's no salary, right? It's all commission, but I'm like, oh, okay, so that's a bet on myself, and I have nothing but time to dig myself out of this ditch. And every phone call, every visit, and all that it's a chance to be productive and to make money. But over time, like an arranged marriage, you often fall in love with something. And I started to fall in love with the fact that we can really help people just by the stroke of a pen when it comes to insurance, helping them invest their money and in all these other things that we could do as financial advisors. And over time, I really, like I talked about earlier, swimming. I was swimming forward doing the business, but I was also looking around for other opportunities to offer more comprehensive planning. So over time, I just really built the business up and it evolved. And things started to grow from there and doubled again and kind of continued that pace for a while and just really build a significant business. And it's funny because it was only after I started to have success that I finally sort of took a step back and dealt with the grief of losing the restaurant, which felt like losing a loved one to a degree. So it's I realized I had this all like bottled up in me and I never got a chance to really say goodbye to the restaurant because I had to go right on to the next thing to make money and then sell everything for pennies on the dollar at night and on the weekends and all that type of stuff. So it was really a crazy time, but it was necessary and it wasn't negotiable. Like I said, I wasn't going to be a failure. I wasn't going to accept it. So I had to do what I had to do. And in my book, I talk about it. I have a simple two-step theory for success for anyone in any industry. And even if it's something at home, step one is figure out what needs to be done. Step two is go do it. I mean, it's not going to be more simple than that, but it sure is effective. I knew I needed to reach out to people for a chance to set them up with one of my insurance plans or investment plans. I knew I had to do that. And so that's what I did. And I reached out to as many people as I could. When when it was 5 o'clock and the day was over for the average person, I would go to Starbucks and I would get a second cup of coffee and I would call people till about 8 o'clock. And then some days I would start to look for people that lived on the West Coast and I would reach out to them because it was 5 o'clock for them at that time. So I'm thinking, hey, I don't care. I've got nothing but time and energy to spend on productive endeavors. My wife was working at a bank 7 days a week. It was perfect. I wasn't going to be home. I didn't want to do anything that involved spending money. I wanted to only be involved with making money and ultimately building that business. And so it just fed upon itself after a while because I saw what was possible.
When did you get involved with the sports ownership? Like how long into the journey was that?
Yeah. So I started to be able to get my head above water after a while. So probably around 10 years in the business. So figure around 2014, 2015. That's when I was starting to say, okay, I've made some money. I got rid of my debt. I had some extra money. I was investing in traditional ways, like I help my clients with. And I thought, I kind of missed out on a lot of my best years in my 20s because I was just, I had the restaurant where I worked myself into the ground and then well below the ground. Then I got into financial services where I worked like a dog 7 days a week. I would drive an hour and a half each way on a Sunday if that might be an opportunity. Just I had to do that. So I kind of missed out on some things. Like I missed sports. I missed watching basketball. I grew up, my brother and I, huge basketball fans, going to games, following the players, collecting cards. I just stopped doing everything. Like any hobby or interest I had, just done, like out of the question. And so after a while, I was like, okay, I'm doing well. I've got some money. I've got some time. Like, be nice to myself a little bit. What do I want to do? So I'm like, maybe I can invest some of this money, but do something I'm passionate about. And that was where sports came in. So I reached out to my local team, the Sixers, about ownership opportunities. And I couldn't afford part of the actual Sixers because even back then, 1% was like a 7+ figure check, which I didn't have, that kind of extra money. So I looked at their G League team, and the team was so bad at that point. They were in their tanking phase that they denied at the time, but they admit, yeah. I mean, I think everyone knows that anyway. This is where they ultimately got Embiid and these kinds of guys to build the team to kind of where it hopefully will be this year. But the team was so bad, they were desperate to get people in the arena and mix it up that they were going to take me on as a minority owner of their G League team. But the Colangelo family came in and they decided to shut things down and kind of fix it from inside. So that opportunity fell apart. But fast forward about 5, 6 years, a couple other teams I found out were open to minority ownership of business owners. And I found this team in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I planned to not buy in. I told my wife on the way out the door when I was going to meet with the majority owner, I said, hey, I'm not doing this, just so you know, but I'm just going to go and meet the guy, hear what he has to say. And on the way home, I called her and I said, hey, we're doing this. I'm excited. Get ready.
What she said?
So I don't remember what she said. She generally lets me do my thing and trust me. Fortunately, I've not steered her wrong, but it wasn't what
Yeah.
I expected. And really the thing that got me hooked with this team was, and by the way, they're the affiliate for the Denver Nuggets. So the Denver Nuggets are our NBA team. My team is the G League team, the Grand Rapids Gold. So I had never even gone to Michigan in my life. So the first time I stepped foot in Michigan was, to go see a home game for my new team. So that because people say, why would you get a team in Michigan? I was like, well, look, when you get drafted, you're going to go where they draft you. And so with sports ownership, a lot of times you've got to go where the opportunity or where the opening is. And the thing that got my attention with them is they said, you can be as involved as you want to be, and I really like that because I love sports. I love business. So I really like the idea of marrying the two of those together. And it's been since 2021 since I joined. And so this is season 4 starting up soon. And I love it. I love getting to know the ownership, the players, the coaches, the GM, the equipment guys. Like everyone's got a story. Everyone's been somewhere, trying to go somewhere. And the thing I like about the G League is it's guys that haven't been coddled and told they're the best thing ever. They're guys that have to fight. Their backs are against the wall. They don't know if they're going to make it. They don't know if they can put food on the table. Uh, and really it reminds me of me, at 24 and 25, down on my luck, wondering if I'm ever going to live that life that I envision. And so I root for these guys, and we have a lot of guys that have come and gone through our team, and I stay in touch with some of them and I root for them. I watch a lot of the moments of the games, the NBA games where it's absolute trash time. And those are the times I tune in the most because I want to see my guys. Sometimes that's where they get their opportunity to shine. And you look at a guy like Colin Gillespie, who is now on the Suns. I think he's actually a starter now. He was with the Nuggets and the Gold, and he stepped up. He's just one of those guys who went to Villanova. He's a winner, and he wasn't getting a lot of time. He's not a prototypical player. He's a little shorter, but he's just a good, smart player. And he got a chance to show that with our team and got called up to the Nuggets a bit and showed that with the Nuggets. And the Suns saw it. They picked him up on their G League team, and he continued to excel. And he played a pretty big role for the Suns last year, who really retooled their roster. But now he's going to be a big part of that team. And he's a guy could have gone either way, but he stayed focused on the goal, and he kept working on it, kept making progress, and now he's a legitimate NBA player.
A lot of your experience and the things that you went through earlier on, and when you said they remind me of me, and you can impart wisdom on them or with them and share that experience and put that into it. Are there many other people that you've come across in these ownership groups, or people that kind of, I don't want to say mirror your experience, but come from a similar place? Or do you find come people that are just, I'm here to invest there because I have extra money and I put my chips over here? Or are there more people like you that are in the game that that want to be a part of this and be a big part of it?
I think most people just want to be part of it, say they're part of it, but aren't necessarily big hoop heads. And I don't want to offend anybody because I know there are people that are like that. But just for me, all I know is for myself that I love the game of basketball, and I love understanding the business of basketball. And there's a lot of things that I don't understand that I try to learn. Sometimes we have a great player. Like we had a guy last year, Trey Alexander. I can't remember if he was MVP of the G League or his first team, and phenomenal player, averaged like over 20 points. Just he was our guy last year, and we didn't re-sign him. The Nuggets didn't pick him up, and so sometimes I question, hey, what are we doing? Like we had this great player that we developed. Why didn't the Nuggets grab him? And now I don't know where he's going to end up, but you get to know these guys and you see them grow. And you invest in that, and so sometimes there's things I don't understand, and that's the reality. Like we're all sitting at home on our couch watching games, whether it's NFL, NBA, and we're always like, oh, do this, do that. People, insiders within the team, they know much more about what's going on than we do. And so sometimes that's the answer, is there's things that you don't see. Like I've seen guys that are great players, crowds love them, but they're cancers in the locker room, and you see that, unfortunately. And those are some of the guys that have been told they're the best thing ever since sliced bread, and no one can tell them anything. And that's maybe going to be true as they fizzle out in their careers, because they just won't hear anything other than you're the best thing ever and you're going to be our guy. And some people will play their role as well as possible. Other people will not buy in, not be a team player, and ultimately they're going to end up who knows where.
Seeing behind the curtain on that, and you hear it all the time with sports, like, well, it's a business and people get traded, people get cut, people get, injured, then cut. And it's like, man, that's their life. But one of the things that you alluded to before, with your experience and losing the business, you said it was like losing a loved one. But I would even go a step farther. Like sometimes it's like your own death. It's like because when you put so much into it and your identity is tied to it, when you lose it, it's like losing your own life. It's like a death in a way of yourself.
Yeah. You're right about that. And I even say that it was like a part of me died. I put everything I had into the business, blood, sweat, tears, money, obviously, just everything. And just I mean, there's no better way to say it. I mean, it died. And so therefore part of me died with it. And it took a long time for me to not bring that part of me back to life, but to kind of like evolve. Right. There was times where even now, like there's a lot of times where I just won't smile. It's not because I'm not happy. It just is it's like I had like this game face demeanor. And also I had to get really thick skin to go through a lot of these experiences. Like I never in my life talked to somebody like cursing at them, like ever. But during the restaurant days, like when I was getting contractors to build out my spot, I mean, all this stuff. I mean, I had to kind of like pump myself up and being like, you need to do this or this is going to happen. And I wasn't used to that. I was always a nice guy. I still am, but I needed to get thick skin and be tough. And so when kind of that ended, it's almost like you've got to turn it on and off and to a degree. And so I still have that now, even in my business now. Like if someone's, giving me a hard time and giving me, red tape kind of runarounds, it's like, listen, like here, this is what we're going to do. Just tell me how we're going to do it. Or I need you to do this. Don't give me excuses. Just this needs to get done. Like, how are we going to do it? And it's effective, but I can still be a nice guy at the same time. So anyway, it's like, it was almost a little bit like PTSD, right? And even still, like I think about it now, and again, it's been a long time, but I remember like I live in the same house I lived in, well, almost 20 years. So I bought my house in 2006, and the only reason I did was because I paid off my debt after a couple years, thank goodness. And one of the payments I had on the loans was like I think it was like $4,000 for one of them. And so my mortgage, I was like, well, if I get a mortgage for that same payment, I'm used to paying that bill, but I can actually have something tangible for it in a house. But I remember so many days and nights for so many years walking on the second floor, looking down over the first floor every day. Like, man, I hope I don't lose this house. And, that was stressful, and now I take that same walk and it's just like I smile because I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I got through that I survived that. But for a while, it was tough. I mean, I would feel like I was dressing up and going to war. And again, someone on the outside might say, what are you talking about, man? I've been to real war. I've done this. I've done that, things worse than what I've been through. But I'm just saying, for me in my life, that's what it felt like. I was fighting for my life as I knew it, as I wanted it to be. And I really was. I mean, I easily could have been a guy with nothing, and just getting by, or, really wanted to have that life that I always envisioned of being successful, having a successful business, being happy, enjoying myself, traveling, having time to be with family versus working, all the time. And so I fixated on that destination, and that helped me get through some of those dark times. Not focusing on what is or what might be in a negative way, but what can be if this works out. Right. So we talk about a couple of things like, taking a shot. Well, I might miss it. Yeah, but you might make it. Some people say, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, what if it does work? And I focused on the latter, right? What if it does work, right? What if they say yes? What if I build this business? What if it's successful? What if I have money? Uh, and that was it, right? And when people said no, or they rejected me, it was like, okay, whatever. I've had way worse than this. And that's the other thing about the restaurant. It was so bad that things that were bad in the financial business really weren't that big of a deal. It was almost like when people would say no or reject me, it was like shooing away gnats. I'm just like, get out of here. Like just, keep going. Like, you're not going to stop me.
It's funny you said, because that's what I talked about going to the financial. That was actually the question that I was going to ask you, but I was like, I know this is going to come out because that's just how it is. Like you go through something, it's not necessarily that's how it is, but there's a mindset of once you've gone through something, if you can look at it in context and it's like, listen, I just went through that, call it boot camp or whatever it is, like that experience. I know I can do this because I just went through that. And also it's so relatable because what you can now talk to the players of the team and those things, you have that context now. You have that reference point that you can able to share that experience.
Yeah, I do. And I didn't think about that at first, but that's part of it is like when I did the book, my publisher was like, well, who's it for? And I was like, well, it's for everybody. They're like, you can't do that. You can't make a book for everybody. So I went back and I fine tuned it many times. And as I was going through it, I was like, this is actually great for college athletes coming out of school, and college athletes that don't have a sport that they're going to play at 22 years old for the rest of their lives professionally, or Olympic athletes whose careers all end at a young age, G League players, WNBA women's college players, stud college football athletes that aren't going to play in the pros. So it's like, what do you do? Who are you? What's your identity? And so this book is for those people. Really, I mean, that's a huge market for this book because it's figuring out who you are, what makes you feel on and alive, and passionate to get out of bed each day. And the great thing about athletes is they've shown that they have amazing assets, traits, skills, things that allow them to be great at what they do. Like Steph Curry didn't come out shooting threes. Wasn't that it's not that he's a great 3-point shooter. It's the traits that he had that led to working on that, to becoming a great 3-point shooter, right? It could have been his attention to detail, his work ethic, maybe being a perfectionist, maybe his mindset that the next shot's going in. And so, God knows how many threes he's taken, but he literally believes the next one's going in, and he's generally right.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna
there's
say he's usually right. Everything's going in, yeah.
it's all these traits, right? I had these traits that allowed me to open the restaurant, and the restaurant didn't work out. But these same traits that I had from when I was a kid, that I didn't think they were valuable skills, assets, traits, all that stuff, they allowed me to be very successful in the financial services business. And so it's everyone digging in. What am I good at? What do I like doing? What's my potential? Is it higher than I think it is? And do I have a purpose? And it's okay if you don't know what that is, but it's not okay if you're not trying to find it. The journey is really what life is as a whole, but the journey is kind of the fun part, because you're on a mission. Like when I watch a movie, I love watching movies because it's a journey. It's like it's an experience, right? Like, I don't want to know what happened in a movie. I want to see it. I want to see how it unfolds. I want to buckle up and go on that wild ride. And so that's why living life is so exciting, because you never know what can happen in a day. You might lose one day, but that's one day, right? I mean, look, the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year,
Yeah, they
right? I
did.
don't,
Go
re-
Birds.
I don't remember what their record was. I do know that they weren't undefeated. I do know that they lost, or you could say they were losers sometimes, but ultimately they accomplished their goal, right? They had their mission, they had a purpose, and they did it, right? And no, it doesn't matter that they lost sometimes, that they got knocked down, they kept getting back up. And so life is the same way. You're not going to go perfect, you're not going to go undefeated, but it's only when you give up is that's when you lose.
What was the inflection point when you were like, "I'm going this is a book. Like, I have enough experience. I wanna share this. I wanna put this in a book." Was this something you thought about for a while, or was there a moment that you're like, "You know, I'm gonna start writing this out?"
Yeah, I started writing it about 10 years ago, and I felt compelled to share the things that I had learned. Kind of like what we're talking about. Like, I just felt
Mhm.
like I had a lot of valuable experiences, knowledge, and it just didn't feel right to kind of like let that all stay within me. And so one day that just kind of hit me, like, I need to write a book. I need to get all this down on paper. And I knew nothing about it. I knew how to type, and I knew what was in my head. And so the goal was to get out everything in my head onto my computer screen. And I did that feverishly for some period of time. And when I felt I got it all out, I hit save. I titled it Joel's Book, closed the computer, and I never even looked at it. I didn't read it. I mean, nothing for like 10 years roughly. And I was at a conference a couple of years back, and there was a motivational speaker, and it just boom, like I had that life switch moment where it's like the time is now. Like let's do this. And I opened up the book and I read it, not remembering what I said, and I really didn't know how I was going to feel about it. But when I was done reading it, I said, this is something. I think I can do something with this. This is pretty good. So I went back into the creation phase of typing and adding more detail and color. Like I mentioned, like what was the two-page story about my restaurant became like a 40-page story about the restaurant, and really taking the readers into the highs and the lows of that whole experience, and how ultimately everything evolved from there. I added in my more recent experiences, like being part of a couple different sports ownership groups, and everything I talk about, turning it around to provide lessons, tips, advice, guidance, things for other people to think about so they can have their life be more efficient than mine was, right? If we're at point A, we want to get to point B. Ideally, we'll get there in a straight line. My line was like this, way down here and then up here. And so, like, I don't know how everyone else's life is going to turn out, but we want to see more north of the line, a little bit less going this way. And
Yeah.
so I think the book can save people time, money, misery, stress, all kinds of things. And so I think the value of everything I've gone through is amplified when other people get to sort of live it as well.
There's a congratulations again, finishing the book, even going through
Thank
the
you.
process and the journey of doing it. Um, and I know the book comes out October 21st. I'm going to include links to the book. And where else can folks find you when they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, well, you're right. The book will be out October 21st. It's going to be a hardcover, Kindle, and there's an audiobook that I recorded myself. Those will all be out on that same day. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much anywhere where books are sold. If you want to drop me a line or check up check more about me, you can visit my website. It's bookjoelsteele.com.
All right. I'm going to include all the links in the show notes. Before we take off, well, first of all, thank you for your time. This has been great. I follow what you've been doing and who you are, and it's very impressive. And I just wish you the best of luck in everything that you do going forward. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with? Any words of wisdom? Even though you already dropped plenty, you gave plenty here. But
Yeah, I mean, look, if we have another 6 hours, I'd be happy to keep going, but we don't. But ultimately, I don't wanna be that guy who says, read the book," but I really do think people will benefit from things I talk about. I didn't do it to waste people's time. I did it to entertain and to inspire, and I think that's really what we want at the end of the day. We want to be entertained, and we wanna be inspired, and we wanna be the best versions of ourselves, and that's what I hope this helps to do. Other than that, I will just tell you one last thing I talk about in my keynotes, and that's remember B to A, meaning believe to achieve. If you don't believe in yourself and truly believe you can accomplish anything that you want to do, no one else is. It's up to you. You've got to believe without any kind of a doubt that whatever you want to accomplish can be done and that you can do it. And you've got to convince yourself 100%, not tell yourself, but know it. You have to know it. Just like Steph Curry knows he's going to hit that next shot, you have to know undoubtedly that you can do anything that you want to.
I love it. Thank you, sir, Mr. Joel Steele.
Thank you.